I say if you know those core principles of, understanding that everything is chi, that there's a yin and a yang or yang to everything, right? A high or a low vibration, and then know that 5 element cycle, you can do anything.
Welcome to Winning with Feng Shui. Join me, Candace, a certified Feng Shui practitioner, for a chat with Feng Shui experts from every walk of life. They'll share their inspirational stories of helping themselves and their clients achieve winning results and success using Feng Shui. Hey guys, I'm here today with Tina Falk. So Tina Falk is the founder of Via Feng Shui, and she's a professional Feng Shui educator and Chinese astrologer. Tina is an innovative educator who trains and certifies Feng Shui practitioners globally. She creates meaningful dialogue and tools to enhance any Feng Shui experience with with a background in other modalities such as numerology, chakras, and life meditation with a Buddhist Meditation Master. Tina takes a comprehensive look at connections between your mind, body, soul, spirit, and our environment. Welcome, Tina. It's so great to have you on.
Hey, Candace, thanks for inviting me in. This is such a treat to see you and to spend some time with you and to talk about our favorite topic, right?
Yes, for sure. So, the audience may not know that Tina was actually, I got my certification through Tina in Via Feng Shui School. And that story I'll have to probably come back to because I want to focus, of course, on you, Tina. But yes, you're my very first Feng Shui mentor, the person who got me started in Feng Shui. So when I thought about doing these interviews, of course, I was like, I have to have Tina on, and you'll be the very first interview that I put out. So I'm so excited to have you on.
Such an honor. And you know what? You were my first student to fly in to Salt Lake City for the live training.
Oh,
And it was
really?
like, because it was something that I had put out into the world. It's like, you know what? I can, why can't people come to me? Is that a possibility? And then here you are. You flew in, there you are sitting in the classroom. It was amazing. So thank you.
And it was such a beautiful class. The setting was so beautiful because you taught in the fall. Like we did it in October, and it was so beautiful, and it was just so relaxing and very memorable experience for me. I really
Oh,
enjoyed
good.
that time. Yeah.
Thank you for
So
saying that. Thank you.
yeah, yes. So again, I'll have to come back to I think I'm going to interview myself. I was joking around. I was like, I think I'm going to
Sure.
interview myself. But so for you, how did your feng shui journey start? How did you start doing feng shui? Like, how did you come to it?
Well, I didn't really know about it until I want to say it was about 1990, probably 1999. I had two friends of mine and I had met this Buddhist meditation master here in Utah, and he was quite gifted, like very connected to the other side of the veil, very intuitive and eager to share. And when we met him, we just went in to meet him. And he invited us back to learn from him. He says, you come back, you bring 13 people, and I teach you. And he's from Vietnam, and he was younger than us. And so we're like, oh, okay, we can find 13 people. Heck. So we were bringing in friends and colleagues and stuff, and we showed up. And it ended up being a 4-year journey. It was incredible. And that group of 13 kind of dwindled away through the years. And it kind of ended up being 4, I think maybe 5 of us at the end. And he took us down an incredible path. And we were the only white students he's ever taught. It was always the Vietnamese, culture in Utah that he tapped into. And he taught us, I think, one of the best gifts that I've ever been given, aside from my friends and family and my children and all of that, is he taught us the 5 Chinese elements, but he taught us how to channel them and become them through meditation and through mudra and using that as a tool. And in the setting for him, it was used as a healing tool. Oftentimes we'd get calls in the middle of the night because there was somebody that was dying or that needed a healing. Their soul had left their body. And I know this gets a little out there, But he would call us, us and his Vietnamese students to come, and we'd spend hours tapping in using these elements to see, to kind of break down, what was in front of us. And in that culture, this isn't in kind of a judgment at all. It's a very black and white culture. It's very yin and yang. And so that's the way that world, that environment was for us. So it was like, this is an evil thing and we need to combat it. So being able to use those 5 Chinese elements in that way was, I mean, mind blowing. I mean, we don't even have time for the experiences that he allowed us to have. But he really wanted us to hone our skills in what these elements were. In fact, he would have us spar one another, almost like we were in like a karate class or something. So he would blindfold us and we'd sit facing each other on the floor. And we'd have to hold a certain mudra that would bring about an element. And so you could see it, you could feel it, you could use it. And then we'd have to know what our opposer was projecting. So if an opposer is projecting water at me, I have to think about what element I want to, mitigate that fire energy that's coming at me. Do I want to put water on it? Maybe. But then you've got kind of this power struggle between fire and water that just, it's hard to pull out of that energy because you're feeling it, you have to compete it. So it's like, well, maybe fire doesn't need water. Maybe fire needs earth, right? So that earth is kind of toning it down a little bit, not like totally contrasting. So it really helped me appreciate the 5 elements at a level I never expected. And then it was when after the 4 years, I don't think it was planned this way, like here's 4 years, but he ended up leaving Utah. He came to our homes and blessed our altars, and he left, and I'd never seen him again. And so there was kind of this void. There was kind of like, what next? What do I do with this? And it had always been kind of in the back of my mind that, he had talked about feng shui. Like he would say, oh, you're too much fire. Like you're more masculine in your marriage than your husband. And he would say stuff and make suggestions. And so that had kind of piqued my interest. And so it was, within a few years after he left, my children were a little bit more, independent. And I just came across a feng shui practitioner. And lo and behold, that was here in the Salt Lake Valley, the last place I expected any of this to occur, right? We're not from here, but we moved here. And this whole world of spirituality and kind of tapping into these other resources was kind of presented. And then it was in 2005 when I met my feng shui practitioner here, Mary Shirtliff. And that opened up a whole other world for me. And she just was so open and wanted to share everything she had learned. She had done China studies and studied under the great masters. And I thought, gosh, if she's willing to share, I'm going to soak it up. And so that's been my journey to be able to apply that. And I was grateful enough to have a feng shui master that understood landform feng shui, that knew the Chinese astrology and the classical feng shui, as well as the parts of BTB, the ceremonial stuff, the intention part, the form and function part of feng shui, and then layer that all together in a system, that works and how to make it your own. And then in 2012, she retired and gifted me her school. And so then I started teaching. And so I've been teaching and sharing with people like you since then.
Yes, what an amazing. So I knew a little bit about, you've kind of touched on that a little bit before about, studying with a monk, but man, I had never heard the whole story. Thank you for sharing that. That's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it really amazing how everything like fits together? There's there are different modalities, within Chinese metaphysics but they all still rely on those 5 elements and that element cycle, everything within that system.
I say if you know those core principles of, understanding that everything is qi, that there's a yin and a yang or yang to everything, right? A high or a low vibration, and then know that 5 element cycle, you can do anything. You can do any kind of feng shui or astrology or anything. And you just see your world differently. You shop differently, right? The choices you make are different. You start looking at people, it's like, oh, I bet you're a metal person,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. It can be really simple, and then as you know, it can be quite complex.
Yeah. You kind of talked about before also the fact that you kind of arranged furniture and stuff like that when you were a kid. Like you kind of took
Mm.
that from your environment and you use that as a kid. Can you tell the audience about that? I'd like to talk about that.
So yeah, I'm a super sensitive kid. My family would make fun of me as a kid because I was, oh, she'll cry at the drop of a hat, and so I lacked empathy around me, but it was deep, deep, deep inside of me. And I lived in a volatile home, as many people do. And the only thing I could control was me and my space. I couldn't control if my mom was going to come home upset. I couldn't control if we were going to pack up and move again. I couldn't control if my divorced parents were going to fight and I wasn't going to go see my dad this weekend. None of that. Or what school I was going to have to change to. But I could control my space. And my space to this day, my home, like back then it was just my bedroom. It's my sacred space as a little girl. I was the oldest of two. My little brother was 3 years younger than me, or is 3 years younger than me. And my room, everything had a place. It was not a OCD thing. It was not like I needed things clean. I needed control of my space. I needed to know where things were because I didn't know externally, outside of that. In fact, I went as far, this is how sensitive I was. I had quite the collection of stuffed animals and dolls, and they were my friends. They were my just dearest friends, and I talked to them. And I had a double-sized bed, and when I would go to sleep every night, I would line them up on my pillows across the top, and I'd leave just this little space for me on the side, on the very edge of the bed to sleep. And then so I would lay them out very neatly, and they were in a specific order, and then I'd rotate them so that one could sleep a different each night. One would sleep next to me
Oh,
because I wanted to give them each love. I didn't want anybody to always be stuck over at the end. And that's the dog in me, wants to take care of, friends and family. And and this is coming up, so I'm going to share. It was one of the moves that we had made, my mom and I. My brother and I got separated, and my mom and I moved from one state to another state. And I remember after we had got settled in, I was in high school, and I said, where's that one box with my stuffed animals? And she said, oh, I gave it away to the mover to give to his daughter.
oh,
I was devastated. I was out because that's something I can never get back, right? And so, I don't have anything left of my childhood, that I've been able to pull forward. And maybe that's okay because I got a lot of other baggage I'm holding on to from then. But my space was important to me. In fact, I realized it so much that because it was just my mom and I, and we were more like roommates. And my mom was, it wasn't like we weren't like poor, but my mom did well, but she worked several jobs. And so she was, working graveyard shifts at the hospital and stuff like that. But even as a teenager, I found out how important it was to even like move the furniture in the living room. And the first time I did, it was after school, and I didn't have a whole lot of friends. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder if I was sat over here. And so I just started moving furniture. And I can remember not really being concerned about, for one of the first times, not really concerned about my mom's response when she walked in the door. She was kind of one of those people when you hear the doorknob, it's like, oh, what's going to walk through the door? It was a little bit of anxiety there. And I remember her walking into the room, and she was like, oh, well, isn't this feel great? This is nice. I would have never done this. And her reaction, I felt it. I could feel it. And so it became something that it wasn't conscious, but every once in a while, and I would just feel like, oh, this is necessary. I need to move the furniture. And so I would act on that, just follow that intuition. And it always seemed to have a good payoff of just shifting. And who knows what she was going through? Maybe it helped her on some level, but it certainly helped me
Yeah.
on another level. Unfortunately, now that's one thing. Like in my own living room, I have this huge 10 by 10 sectional sofa. It's not moving. I
Yeah.
can't move it. But I do. I kind of get bored with, and I know that's like some of the energy in my chart that I get bored. I have a horse and a dragon that gets bored with stuff, and I like that change.
Hmm.
So, but now I'm okay with changing my external environment, right? Saying okay to people that don't really serve me, or I just quit a teaching job that I've had for a while. So I'm shifting, I guess, that idea of what needs to be changed. One of those people, if I go to the store, I have to take a different road back.
Hmm.
I want it because I want a different experience. I want to see a different people. I want to see a different view. So that's, I guess I change what I can, and I have more control over that now, now
Yeah.
that I'm an adult and on my own.
Yes, yeah.
Hmm.
So I know even just changing the environment. So a lot of times people ask me where to start with feng shui, and one of the things I tell them is just start with your furniture. I mean, we can get very complex, but I mean, honestly, what they call feng shui forms. Changing, having your bed in a good position, having your desk in a good position. And
Hmm.
using that's the best way to start. And so for sure, I mean, that's what I tell people. Try moving your furniture where it feels better, and even as
Hmm.
kids, we can definitely feel it. One of my favorite stories I think I tell is that I went to my daughter's school and I did a short talk on career day, and she was like, I don't know how you're gonna explain feng shui. And so of course, for a bunch of fourth graders, I had to break it down. And one of the things that I told them is that, have you ever like moved your furniture around, or your parents move your furniture? Like even maybe you were at school and you come home and you're like, oh, this feels
Hmm.
different or it feels better, or even just comparing the energy or the way a space feels from your grandparents' house to your parents or your aunt and
Hmm.
uncle or whatever. And so definitely it does change the way your space feels. I mean, and that
Hmm.
affects our
It
moods and
does.
everything else,
Hmm.
and other
And
people's
two,
moods
think
around us.
about, you have a different view when you're sitting in a chair in a different side of the room. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you know. And I'll do that when people come over. If I have like guests coming over, it's like I'll go sit in a chair I think they're going to go sit in and see what their
Hmm.
view's going to be.
Hmm.
And like I might go change something on the shelf because I've been looking at it from this view this whole time. So, yeah, I mean, and going back to, I think people are just so intuitive and they know. And I typically will tell people, it's like, so how are you feeling? Because if you're not feeling good, and if you're sitting at this desk and you're not being productive and you're getting distracted, because it's like, oh, now all of a sudden I'm texting or I'm looking at this website when you should be working, then maybe it's time for a change.
Hmm.
Maybe you need to
Yes.
move your desk or move your chair.
After you came to my house, I realized that my son's room, like he needed to be upstairs in a different room. And
Mm-hmm.
so I moved my office to the space I'm in now. And, looking at some things later on, I realized like, this area here is actually my intelligence area, and there's just a lot of different things. So I study in here. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And sometimes just following, you said, your intuition within a space and the way you set it up and just all of that, it really does make a big impact because I think we are more intuitive than we know. The one thing I would love to talk about, I would love you to tell a story or tell, us of a time that you feel like you really impacted either a client's life or, has how feng shui has helped you. You really felt like, wow, that was really impactful.
Oh my gosh, I've been doing this for a while. So
Yeah.
I kind of, when you first, okay, so your two things are popping up. So if we have time, I'll share both. But if not, I'll just share one. One of the things I love doing the most is helping people sell property that they don't think is going to sell, or that's been sitting on the market for a long period of time. And it's kind of gotten to a point where it's like, I can sell your house for you. That confidence has never lived in my body ever, ever, ever. And so if I say that, it's like that's the only place that I know so well, because I've had such stellar results from it.
Awesome.
And so the example that's coming up, because I think everybody, whether you're selling a house or not, I think this is an um, important insights. So I have a client, and I had helped him sell another house. This similarly, but he had bought a piece of property off of a golf course here in Salt Lake City, and he ended up he had considered redoing it for a home for him and his daughter. But once they got into it, he's like, nah, this isn't really where I want to live. I'd rather work with my contractor, my realtor, and my designer, and my feng shui practitioner, and do this as a flip, right? Do this in a different level, sell this house, make some money. So I consulted, throughout the process with the designer and the architect, and it ended up being this gorgeous, really custom, kind of an extreme house. Like all the trim work was black and just crazy features, tile work and all of that stuff. A two-story house. It was like a $1.4 million house sitting on the golf course. So the house gets done, and I give them some recommendations on like when to put it up for sale, where the for sale sign should go, that kind of stuff. And then, that project's done, so I don't hear from my client. So several months later, I was in the neighborhood with my husband, and I said, "Oh, I want to show you that house." And so we drove down the street, and we pulled up to the house, and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, there's a for sale sign still out front. There's nobody living in it. What the heck is going on?" So as soon as I got home, I texted my client and I said, "What the heck? Is the, blank house still up on the market?" And he's like, "Yeah, it is." This is 13 months later. And I'm like, "This isn't right. What the heck is happening?" And I said, "Why haven't we done the sell your house cures?" He's like, "I don't know. Why haven't we?" And I said, "Well, when can you be there? And I'll meet you there." And he says, "Well, this was Monday." He says, "I'm going to Mexico on Wednesday," because he was building a house down in Mexico in Cancun. And I said, "I can be there in the morning." And he's like, "Great." And I said, "You need to bring this, 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 and this." And those were things he had from other sales that we had done. So I meet him there in the morning. The house is not staged. It's empty. But like I said, all the finishes are very ornate and spectacular, and you kind of want those to stand on their own. So we came in the house, we were talking, I was setting the cures, and I said, "I'm going to do a walkthrough before we leave. I just want to walk through and see what the energy's doing, kind of clear it up a little bit." I didn't like smudge or anything. I just used my energy. I used what Master Jimmy, that's what our Buddhist meditation master, we called him that. I just used what he taught me. So I walked through the house by myself, and I came back downstairs, and I had a lower level, and I was like out of breath. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on in this house, but the energy's too fast. It's moving too fast. People, they're going to come in, they're going to walk through the house, and they're going to check their watch and on to the next thing. And it's like, we got to see the next house. The sun's going down. They're going to forget about you just as quickly as they came in and left. We got to slow things down in here. So he's like, "Well, what do we do?" And so I said, "Well, what if we put in, because there's no place for anybody to really, or no reason for anybody to stay." So I said, "Here's what I suggest. Let's put a couple swivel chairs, upholstered chairs, right here in this main room. They can sit down, look out these huge picture windows at the mountain, and then swivel and look out the back window, and there's the 10th green." That gives them a reason to stay, get comfortable, feel themselves in the space. Let's put some things on the kitchen island, because the kitchen was amazing. Maybe put a couple stools, material to read, that kind of thing. And he's like, "Yeah, I can do that. I'll call Stacy and have her do it this week." So we were standing out in the driveway on the way out. And I said, "Wait a minute, there's one more thing I want you to do." I said, "When you get to Mexico," I said, "I want you to wade out into the ocean. Like wade out up to your waist." And I said, "You got to let this house go. You've lost a lot of money. And I know you're frustrated with the crew, you're frustrated with the contractor and the designer that you went way over budget because that's what they always do with you. It sat way too long. You had a lot tied up in this. You were, because he was the main investor. So any kind of animosity, you got to let it go. Any money loss, you got to let it go. Any, hard feelings, you got to let it go. Anything, any expectations around this, I want you to let it go and then dunk yourself under the ocean and let the tide, let the wave take it away. It's like, yeah, I can do that. So I waited about a week, and about a week later, I texted him and I said, "Hey, how was Mexico?" "Oh my gosh, it was great. The house is amazing, really cool." And I said, "Oh, that's great." And he said, "Oh, and I walked out into the waves and I did what you said." And he said, "When I dunked myself underwater, it was amazing. I could just feel it all just lift away from me."
Wow.
And I said, "Really? That's amazing." And he said, "Yeah. And oh, by the way, the house is under contract."
Oh, that's amazing.
So we hold on, right? And sometimes it's like, no, 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 I'm ready to let this house go, or I'm ready to let this job go, or this person go. But if we have any kind of hook that's a loss of this, or a frustration about this, or an emotional connection, we really can't let go. And sometimes I'll have people who are selling a home because their children have moved on. Well, they might have a grown child who's living across the country who has such an emotional connection because that's the home I grew up in. I don't want somebody else living in my house. If they're holding on to it, you're going to have a hard time selling the house. We have a hard time moving on, and when we can really surrender and let something go, man, we can manifest just like that. We can create what we want and step into that power of that. And it's such an exhilarating feeling because then now you're excited about moving into the next phase. Because it's
Yeah.
like, what did I just do? That's crazy. And that's the way it happened with the last house that I, sold with him. And I think that's such a powerful lesson, like I said, not just for selling a house, but for anything that we need to release. We and just kind of surrendering to it, and even being and however, you know, we do have to realize that if it's a relationship with other people, they're going to have their hooks, or their cords that they're attaching to us. But we can do what we can to release and let things go. Feng Shui is just not surfacey stuff. We have
Yeah.
to do the internal Feng Shui work as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're really good at sharing that and reminding people of that.
Yeah. I think I saw this little graphic on, it was like Facebook, and it had a little, like a woman praying, and it said faith with no works, and then it said something like uh, faith with action or something. And I was like, that's the way feng
Mm,
shui works. I was going to make a little post about it. Maybe I'll do it later. But
you
yeah,
should
that's the
totally.
way feng shui works too, I think. Because
Hmm.
yeah, it does take, setting ourselves in the right environment, aligning all that energy correctly. But if we don't even believe it's going to work, I mean, I don't know, how does that work
Hmm.
if we just are so negative and a bad mindset and feeling bad? Then it's so hard. It's like the universe has to work even harder to manifest all that. Well,
Mm.
Tina, it was so nice talking to you today. I really enjoyed catching up. I could talk longer. I think I have an interview, like another interview here in just a second. I could probably talk to you all day. So tell
Lot.
people, yes, about your school, where they can find you. You're now doing the online
Hmm.
certifications, and that's really exciting too. So people could take your class online. Entail.
Hmm. Yeah, so there's a whole series of pages dedicated to the training. The training, I love that I'm being able to offer it online. Right now I've got a student in Oklahoma, I have a student in Canada, I have a student in the UK. It's just so fun to be able to pull these people together and to have this conversation like this. And so, yeah, I have one more training this fall for 2021 that's coming up in September. And I offer the training two ways because what I've discovered is some people really want this experience. They want to go through the training and they want to learn. They want to know how to pull charts for their family and map out their house and fly the stars and do all of that. But they don't necessarily want to do it as a job. So
Mm-hmm.
I have the two paths. You can do it for yourself, right? It's a shorter, you're in the same training group as the other students, but it's all about you. Okay? And it's a little bit shorter path. There's not the requirements for the certification. And then there's the certification part, which I give you more time. There's more mentoring. There's more work that's required, a little bit more class time. And that makes, you become a certified feng shui practitioner. You learn Chinese astrology so that you can pull charts. You know how important that is before you go into somebody's space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an ongoing relationship. I don't even remember how many years it's been since you've done the training, but you have me for life. I'm available to you. So if you need mentoring, you need support, you need to send me a chart or a floor plan or question, I want to support my students so much. And I try to create opportunities to highlight you in things that I'm doing or to, put you online. And we have an ongoing support group. And so I just want to be supportive because when you guys are successful, I feel like I've been successful. If you're listening to this and you haven't found, like somebody that you've connected with, keep looking. Don't give up on feng shui. It's the connection that might be missing or the school that might, you haven't found yet from the right practitioner. So keep looking because feng shui is such a valuable tool and it really can create phenomenal experiences and awareness around your own life. And yeah, so on my website, you'll put the link there. And I'm on social media, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Sign up for my email. And then I actually have a project that Candace is going to be a part of here pretty soon, where we're going to roll out more content and just give feng shui more exposure, and more opportunities for people to really learn the value of it and what it actually is, and how they can use it on their own or reach out to professionals.
So one other thing I wanted for you to share with the audience is that you have, and I don't know if this is just for people that have gone through your certification, or if anybody that just is interested in feng shui can join. But you have a monthly club that you.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell and what would tell us all about it and tell us what it's called if you can do that
Yeah,
real
thank
quick?
you for
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I do. It's a monthly membership. It's called Self, Space, and Spirit. We cover the cosmic trinity, which is in feng shui. It's human luck, man luck, and earth luck. So it's really being able to tap in because like we were saying, it's not just this. It's multi-level. We're multi-dimensional. We might as well tap into all of that. And so we meet every Mondays at 11 o'clock for like 45 minutes. One week of the month, we fly the stars for that month so we know what the energy is. The next week, we look at the astrology, like what animal and element are coming in, so that we can look at our four pillar charts, our Batsa charts, and see what the relationship is. Is it a good one? Do we lay low this month? And then the next one, we look at one of the sectors of the space. And then the fourth week of the month, we set some intentions, wrapping up this month and going into the next. And so, yeah, you can sign up for that too. Like I said, it's called Self, Space, and Spirit. And there's a link right on the front page of my website. And it's $44 a month. It's $11 a week to just get some tips. We come on Zoom like this, and it's a lot of fun to just have that conversation. And it just empowers you. It's like, here's the energy I got to work with. I'm going to make the best of it.
Yes, yes, for sure. For sure. Awesome. I know. So, yeah, I highly encourage people to go check that out. And I'm going to put links everywhere. And Tina, it was so nice. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Candace, and say hi to your family for me. It's been a long
Yes.
time. When you told
Yeah.
me their ages, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, they're big.
Oh my gosh. And everybody listening, have a fabulous day.
Thank you. packed up because we were going to sell our house. We ended up remodeling and some other things. And so we packed a lot of stuff up and we moved it to a storage unit. And I've been cleaning that storage unit out. And I wanted to just kind of downgrade and put everything into just a small storage unit that just had like my Christmas stuff and, just the
Mm-hmm.
things I didn't want to store in my garage. And
Mm-hmm.
um, so I've been pulling out all my kids' things and toys and everything. And my son, the other day, my middle son, he was like, "Hey, did you see that box that had my little figurines and stuff in there?" And they were things from when he was a child. They were his room used to be cowboy themed, and so those little wooden cowboys and just some other little things like that. I think his name, like a name plaque, and just some little things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And he was, I told him, "Oh no, I took a bunch of stuff to Goodwill. I hope it wasn't in there." And he was so upset. And he was like, "That's all my stuff from my childhood. I remember that from my room when I was a kid." And he was like, "It's the only thing I have." And
Oh,
we ended up finding it, but
oh,
it can be
good.
traumatic to lose your stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And
Mm-hmm.
although I have gotten rid of a lot of things that was meaningful to him, and he just it upset him. I had like his karate trophies, and some stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, "Oh, the world's gonna end because I can't find my my box."
Yeah.
you know.
And we do, I think we put a lot of our energy and our power into material things
Yeah.
and situations and events. And when they're taken away, then that we feel like that's taken away too.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important practice to take those memories back,
Yes.
so that the object isn't holding the memory, that it's me holding the memory, if it's a valuable memory to hold on to.
Earlier when you were talking about your meditation, you're like, "Oh, it's kind of out there." You know what, that's what I want to talk about. Like, I want to talk about just everything. Like, your experience is what I want to talk about. So
Hmm.
so nothing's too out there, I promise. I think I have an interview coming up with a lady who puts in like some pagan stuff into her. I was
Oh,
like, "Let's talk
cool.
about it." I was like, "Yes, let's talk." She was like,
Yes.
"That's kind of weird for people." I'm like, "No, it's perfect. Perfect."
When I go into people's homes or businesses, I am going to be the first one to point out to them, look how intuitive you are,
Mhm.
right? That this is like a color that you're attracted to, or that this is where you like to sit and be productive. Because we are, and we don't realize we're doing it. So whether you believe in feng shui or not, we're doing it.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Winning with Feng Shui. To learn more about the guests, please visit the links below in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast and content, go to learnfengshui.com.